The soft blue hue of the monitor cast flickering shadows on his features as he leaned in close, his breath brushing lightly against my neck. "That logic still needs streamlining," Troy murmured, his fingers grazing mine as he reached for the keyboard. 18 hours into the coding marathon, focus was meant to be on functionality, but my mind had drifted elsewhere. I wasn't thinking about machine learning anymore. I was thinking about the way his voice lowered near my ear, how just being close to him made my heart beat faster, and not from caffeine. What had started as a weekend of innovation was morphing into something far more personal. As the night stretched on and the last of the team trickled out, only Troy and I remained, cocooned in the quiet, glowing light of monitors and the city skyline pouring in through massive glass windows. "Everyone else called it quits," I said, raising my arms in a stretch, my muscles aching from sitting hunched for too long. The motion caused my shirt to rise just slightly, enough for me to notice Troy's gaze drop to the sliver of skin that peeked out at my waist. "Not all of us," he said, and something in his tone made me pause. "Some of us are only just warming up." His words had a weight to them, one that pulled my attention fully from the screen. Troy wasn't just another programmer, he was the one who had brought this whole event together. I had spotted him the moment I arrived. Tall, confident, that dark hair that fell forward slightly when he concentrated. He was supposed to be off limits, a line we shouldn't cross. But now, in the dim, open-plan office with only the software of machines and distant city sounds for company, that boundary felt less like a rule and more like a dare. The current between us had been growing all day. Lingering looks, subtle touches when he leaned in to check my work. Now alone, that tension became electric. "Show me what you're working on," he said, rolling his chair closer. He was so near, I caught the faint scent of his cologne, warm and understated, pulling me toward him. I turned my screen toward him, trying to focus on the program, but his closeness scrambled my thoughts. "It's a neural net for pattern analysis," I began, but my words stumbled when his arm draped behind my chair, his presence forming a cocoon around me. "Smart design," he said quietly, his eyes scanning my work. "Though, there's a more refined way to write this function." His finger glided across the monitor, pointing to a specific section of code. "This part could be cleaner." As he leaned in, studying the script intently, I found myself watching the curve of his jaw, the way his lips moved as he dissected the logic. When his gaze finally met mine, we were only inches apart, and suddenly, the professional facade we'd both maintained crumbled in the silence between us. "Belle," he said, almost like a breath, a question unspoken. "Yes," I replied softly, even though he hadn't actually asked anything. Still, we both understood. His hand moved from the chair to my face, his fingers tracing the curve of my cheek with the same care he brought to coding. The gesture was delicate yet deliberate, and I instinctively leaned into his touch. "We shouldn't," he whispered, though his thumb brushed over my lower lip like he was already rewriting that rule. "I know," I said, even as I turned into his hand and pressed a kiss to his palm. "But that doesn't mean we won't." When his lips finally found mine, it felt like the moment had been waiting all day to happen. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, only fire. His kiss was confident, steady, and made everything else fall away. I twisted in my seat to face him, gripping the front of his shirt and pulling him in. When we finally separated, breathing hard, he looked into my eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked, searching my face for doubt. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I stood and stepped between his knees, placing my hands on his shoulders. My next kiss left no room for second guesses. He wrapped his arms around my waist, holding me tightly as our bodies aligned. His fingers slipped beneath the hem of my shirt, playing gently with the edge. "Is this okay?" he murmured against my lips. "Yes," I whispered, giving him permission. He lifted my shirt slowly, his gaze drinking in the skin revealed beneath it. His fingertips followed his eyes, drawing invisible patterns on my skin that had nothing to do with syntax, and everything to do with longing. "You're stunning," he breathed, his voice husky. I reached for the buttons of his shirt, undoing them swiftly until the fabric slid from his shoulders. My hands explored his chest, feeling every solid line, every breath. Without warning, he stood and effortlessly lifted me, placing me on the edge of the desk. Papers fluttered to the floor, forgotten. His mouth captured mine again, his hands exploring my curves, igniting sparks with every touch. "I've wanted this all day," he admitted, his lips brushing my collarbone. "Only today," I teased, fingers threading through his hair. "No," he said, pulling back to meet my eyes. "Since the second you walked in this morning. So focused, so brilliant. I couldn't stop watching you." His honesty sent a rush through me. I had felt the way his eyes followed me, but now, with his hands on my body and his words raw with truth, it was undeniable. "Troy!" I whispered his name like a secret, and he answered by kissing me deeply again, his desire now completely unleashed. His fingers found the clasp of my bra, unfastening it with ease. The sudden chill of air made me shiver, but his warmth erased it quickly. His lips followed his touch, kissing every inch of exposed skin as if memorizing it. When he reached the hollow between my neck and shoulder, I gasped softly, the sensation almost too much to bear. "More," I whispered, tightening my grip on him. He understood, moving lower, each motion measured, intentional, like crafting the perfect algorithm. My breath quickened with the rising intensity, my body responding instinctively to his every move. "Please," I breathed, unsure exactly what I needed, just certain I needed more. He looked up, locking eyes with me. "Tell me what you want, Belle." The way he said my name, with that direct tone, sent heat rushing through me again. "You," I said, barely louder than a breath. "I want you." He stood, undoing his belt slowly. My eyes followed every motion as he removed the last of the barriers between us. Standing between my legs, he leaned forward, resting his forehead on mine. "Are you sure?" he asked one final time. "I've never been more certain," I replied, my arms wrapping around his neck. And when our bodies finally met, it felt perfect, like two pieces of a puzzle sliding into place. He moved with care at first, giving me time. His gaze locked to mine as our rhythm aligned. The bond between us wasn't just fueled by passion. It carried a deeper charge, something emotional that settled inside me like a final puzzle piece I hadn't realized was missing. "You're unbelievable," Troy whispered at my ear, his voice thick with restraint. All I could offer in return were breathless sounds, soft and involuntary, as his pace built into a rhythm that shattered my focus. Each movement sent ripples through my body, teasing the edge of something overwhelming that hovered just beyond reach. His hands locked firmly at my waist, guiding us as the pressure escalated between us. The office disappeared, the real world dissolving until only this remained, the two of us, perfectly in sync, moving with shared intent. When the climax finally hit, it felt like a flawless execution of an elegant system, everything aligning in perfect sequence. I cried out his name, trembling as the wave overtook me. Moments later, he joined me, the release evident in how tightly he clung to me, breath hot and ragged against my skin. We stayed there for a while, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the calm settle in. Neither of us spoke. There was no need to. Our breathing slowed together, hearts still in quiet conversation. The reality of what had unfolded began to take hold. But where one might expect guilt or awkwardness, I felt a deep, contented clarity. I hadn't just crossed a line. I had discovered something rare and real. "Wow," I whispered at last, my voice hoarse. Troy chuckled under his breath. "Yeah, wow." We lingered in that moment, unwilling to let it slip away. But the world around us slowly began to reassert itself. The office, the all-night coding event, the expectations. Troy broke the silence first, voice reluctant. "We should probably—" "Yeah," I echoed, though neither of us made a move to part. Eventually, we began to gather ourselves and get dressed again. The simple act of redressing felt surreal after the storm we'd just weathered together. As I tugged my shirt down, I noticed him watching me, his gaze soft but unreadable. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. I paused before answering. What we'd done had been impulsive, even reckless by most standards. But the way he looked at me, touched me, how we'd connected, it was more than a moment of weakness. "None," I said, my voice firm and sure. "You." His smile was answer enough, but he gave words to it anyway. "Not even one." The hours that followed blurred into a quiet flurry of coding and subtle, charged glances. We finished both of our projects, our teamwork smooth and intuitive, like something had shifted between us, deepening our connection. Every shared glance, every brush of fingers as we passed code printouts or swapped screens, held more than just workplace energy. It was intimate, familiar. As the first blush of sunrise painted the skyline gold and the hum of the city began to stir, people trickled back into the office. The atmosphere shifted, the spell of the night broken, but not forgotten. Troy glanced at me from across the room, and in his eyes, I saw a silent promise. This wasn't the end. "All right, everyone," he announced to the group now returning to their workstations, his voice smooth and authoritative. But this time, there was something gentler in his tone, something that hadn't been there before. "Let's see what brilliant ideas you've all brought to life." I turned to prepare for my presentation, stealing a glance his way. The look he gave me wasn't just professional approval. It was admiration, pride, and something deeper. He saw all of me, not just the programmer, but the person behind the screen. My neural network received praise from peers and judges alike, but the real reward was the subtle smile Troy gave me when I finished. That slight nod of his said more than any evaluation ever could. When the event officially wrapped and participants began filtering out, Troy approached, holding out 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering me one. I accepted it with a grateful smile, our fingers brushing in the exchange. A small contact that reignited the warmth I'd felt earlier. "So," he said, settling beside me, "what now?" It was a question layered with meaning, one that stretched far beyond our code bases and into something less defined, more vulnerable. I took a slow sip, thinking carefully. "Now," I said, "we see where this program goes." His smile was instantaneous. "I was hoping you'd say that." Then, as I raised a brow, he added, holding up a finger, "But we do this right," I said. "Professionalism, boundaries, smart choices." "Agreed," he replied, though the twinkle in his eye betrayed his playful side. "Very professional." "I'm serious, Troy. We both know how complicated this could get." He nodded, his gaze steady. "You're right. But Belle, what happened last night wasn't just about physical chemistry. There's something real here. Don't you feel that too?" I did. I knew he was right. What we shared wasn't fleeting. It wasn't just adrenaline or opportunity. It was a rare kind of alignment. Like finding someone who wrote in the same language as you, thought in compatible structures. "Okay," I said finally,